What is up, guys, and welcome to Season 3 of F1 2019 Career Mode. We are finally here. We can stop the tweets, we can stop the comments, we can stop it all because now we are back for another season. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, team choice. I made a big boy mistake at the end of the last episode. I may or may not have completely given away the team.
I am stupid.
But, there's no but. I've fumbled the bag. Simple as that. But welcome. We are here at Ferrari for the brand new season of this career mode. I don't know what to say. It's a pleasure to be back in Ferrari in red. The last time I was within this team was 5 years ago for F1 2014 career mode, season 1. Here we are, and we can fully get underway with the revival of this team. So, let's get right into it. Driver moves. We have Lucas Weber moving to Alfa Romeo, replacing Pierre Gasly. Lewis Hamilton also goes to Alfa Romeo. So, Alfa Romeo might be one that's massively on the rise this season. Keep an eye out for them. Bottas goes back to Mercedes. Vettel to Haas, replacing Weber. Interesting. Leclerc goes to Williams. Good move for him. Pierre Gasly goes to Renault, so a bit of a downgrade for him. And Kimi Raikkonen becomes my teammate, replacing Charles Leclerc. And I've replaced Vettel at Ferrari. So Ferrari have an all-new driver lineup. Alfa Romeo have a new driver lineup. Vettel goes to Haas. So there's a lot of drivers, swapping around. A lot of them, finding upgrades with their team choice. Alfa is going to be one that's in the rise. I'd say they're a top 3 team, or at least they were starting to be that last season. But let's have a look at the performance index of all the teams. Haas remains the best car. They upgraded further heading into this season. Williams shadowing them in P2. Alfa Romeo made massive gains in the off-season, and I'd imagine that that's why they were able to convince Lewis Hamilton to move over there. Same too with our longtime rival Lucas Weber. He will also be a massive threat at Alfa Romeo. They might be the dark horse to win this championship, only in the drivers, the constructors as well. Vettel going to Haas alongside Hulkenberg. They will again be the team to beat. And then there's always Williams, who are there or thereabouts. They now have Charles Leclerc, so a good boost in their roster. For us this season, Ferrari literally only upgraded the fuel consumption heading into the season. We have 5,000 resource points to spend, which we are going to do now. And this is what I talked about in my review video of F1 2019. Have a look at it from the other day if you haven't seen it already. This is the problem when you switch teams. We've got all these points to spend, but we head into a brand new season with basically last year's car. Nothing has really changed. The car is a little bit better at conserving fuel, but that is it. So, yeah, we're going to spend this 5,000 resource points. We're going to be well and truly behind the 8 ball for the first few races of this season, which makes life a bit difficult, but I'm pretty confident we can get back up there and mix it with the top teams, especially with the way that Ferrari has chosen to go about their development path. They have done a lot of department efficiency upgrades. They've done a lot of quality control upgrades, especially on the engine side, which is going to be the area where we target a lot this season. So too with the downforce. This car looks like it could do with some more downforce. And in terms of the chassis, Ferrari is actually really good in the chassis department, so we should hopefully be better in the areas where the Renault was actually really weak. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'm just spending the resource points now. We went for a major drag reduction upgrade. We also went for a power upgrade with the engine. I'm going to go for a ultimate upgrade for the energy recovery system, which should mean we never need to worry about battery consumption ever again. And we can just push on. Reliability looks decent with the Ferrari. I'd say on par, maybe even slightly better than what we had at Renault. We have 2 gearbox upgrades, so that is better than what we had. We've got quite a few turbo upgrades, 2 ICE engine upgrades, and then one on the right, which I have absolutely no idea what that is. But for reliability, we should be okay, at least for the first few races. But we will need to work on that to kind of match it with the other teams within the sport. But that is everything. Let's go into practice now for the Australian Grand Prix.
I'm sure we're in for an exciting day of Formula One as you join us today in Melbourne. Any moment now, the drivers will take to the track for what should be a very interesting practice session.
Carl probably mentioned the new parts that have come in from the factory. Well, they're all fitted and good to go. I hope they do the trick.
New parts? You mean new part? And one that doesn't make us any faster at all. But thank you, Carl. Great job over the off-season. I mean, switching from Renault to Ferrari was a lot to get used to. He had to learn Italian over the winter break. So he spent more time on the language side of things as opposed to doing his actual job. So we are behind the 8 ball for the start of this season, but that's all part of the fun, I suppose. We've got 5,000 points worth of upgrades heading our way over the next 3-4 races, plus the upgrades we'll continue to do. I have no doubt that we'll be able to get back on top in this career mode season, but it will take a little bit of time to get there. It's just a case of trying to restrict the flow of points that some of the other top teams can get, and just trying to grab as many points as we can, really. It's just simple stuff, but we've just got to be very aggressive, I suppose. Maybe take the odd risk or two, maybe, in the opening few races of the season in an effort to get more points. Because they won't come as naturally to us early on, but you can see a bit of a spin here in practice too. Unfortunately, just pushing the limits of the car a little bit too much on the soft compound tyre. So this was a qualifying run that we did, and I noticed this throughout the weekend, that whenever you leant on the car, at least with this setup on the car, the car didn't like it all too much. It would fight back sometimes, and that was our first occurrence of that behavior from the car. So that's something we'll need to tune with the setup. I was running let's say 5-6 wings, I think, from memory, and I feel like this car has more front downforce upgrades applied to the car versus rear downforce. So that may explain why the car may become unstable sometimes. But we have to be aggressive, like I said, because we're down on our performance. We just have to kind of drive around with a bit of an oversteery car and just hope that we don't overstep the marks at the times that matter. Anyway, heading into qualifying, Mattia Binotto says we're a midfield car and we're hoping to be best of the rest at some point this season.
We're just about ready to kick off today's qualifying here in Melbourne. It's the Australian Grand Prix.
Interesting message from the team principal. You'd think that they want to be shooting for the stars. They want to be best of anyone in F1. This is Ferrari after all, but it is very interesting to see that kind of message being portrayed to the team. Realistically, we're not a million miles off the likes of the Haases, the Williams, the Alfa Romeos of the world, especially once you consider all the upgrades we've got in the bank. Once they eventually go on the car, I feel like we will be able to contest for podiums, maybe the odd win here or there if it suits our car at a specific circuit. And for the moment, if I had to predict where this car sits, I would say edge of the top 10 if we're lucky. So it will be a struggle to get into Q3, I believe. But in terms of getting out of Q1, that shouldn't be a problem. The bottom 3 teams, Toro Rosso, McLaren, and who else is slow? I can't bloody remember. I don't know, it's Toro Rosso and McLaren who are absolutely garbage so far in this career mode. They're not really making any inroads, unfortunately, for them. And actually no driver transfers between any of the slower teams. It was mainly the faster teams that, decided to swap their drivers around, which I felt was very interesting. But yeah, those bottom 3 teams pretty much occupying all the spots in the knockout zone in Q1, so there's no real danger there. We move on now to Q2, and this is where the big bucks will be earned for all of us in the top teams, because it's still quite close for all of us. You never quite know who's going to make it through. I feel like we're going to be contesting with the likes of Mercedes and Renault in order to get through to Q3, so we shall see how it all pans out. Daniel Ricciardo goes for a flying lap. I think he moves himself up into P12 in the order. We now go out for our final run in qualifying 2. We're currently sitting on the bubble here in P10, trying to get a leg up over our teammate and perhaps Pierre Gasly, who has replaced us at our former team. 3/10 up as we go through the middle sector, so life is looking pretty good at the moment. An 18.7 is very fast, but not relative to those around us as we go through the high-speed right-hander. We are out of qualifying. We have pushed the boundaries too much. I feel like we actually ran a little bit wide at the first part of the left-right chicane. And we didn't even mount the curb too much. I ran out too far wide and got onto the grass. It's hard to see it from that angle. We'll get a better view of it here. We missed the apex there. We need to be getting really close to that bollard. And as such, my line was all wrong through the exit phase of that corner. And we touched the grass. And the rest was history. We are out of qualifying in the most dramatic way. So we were up by 3/10. By that margin, we would have been right on the bubble of beating Verstappen, but I feel like we could have gone even faster and got ourselves into Q3. But that's not what's happened, has it?
Bad luck out there today. Let's talk about it. How do you think Lucas will find his new team?
Really? Why don't you go ask him that question?
They say that even a second is an eternity in Formula One, so going 4 winter months with no racing at all has seemed a very long time indeed. We're back though in Melbourne, home of the Australian Grand Prix since 1996. It's the one and only Anthony Davidson. And tell me, here we are, first Grand Prix of the season, first time racing these cars. What are the big questions that need to be answered here, in your view?
Oh, thanks, Crofty. It's a real privilege to be here, and I can't wait to see what's in store for us this season. Now, to answer your question, one of the biggest things is reliability. Formula One cars are full of very sophisticated but also very sensitive technology, and this first Grand Prix of the season is going to push them to the limits. So the most important thing today is to stay out of trouble, get to the end of the race and keep everything in good condition.
With the race minutes away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. Devon Butler put in a fantastic lap yesterday and will start from pole position, edging out Max Verstappen, who'll start from P2. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Hülkenberg, Vettel, Daniel Ricciardo and Faber, Gasly, Hamilton, Perez and Charles Leclerc. Raikkonen, Day, George Russell and Bottas, Norris, Sainz, Kevin Magnussen and Lance Stroll. Albon and Daniel Kvyat completes the grid.
Okay, I know it's your home Grand Prix, but treat it like any other race. Don't take unnecessary risks.
I'll try not to. Here we are for the first race of Season 3. That third backmarker team that I was thinking of was Racing Point. For some reason, they just completely escaped my memory. I haven't seen them at all since like Season 1 when we were battling away with Sergio Perez. Oh, how times have changed. Not really. We still fight with him every single race with him in the Williams. So, here we are for this race. We're going to go to the medium tyres to start off with, finish on the softs, go for the fastest lap strategy, hopefully get ourselves away from some traffic, phase ourselves in stronger at the end, and overtake some cars in an exciting manner. That is, an exciting manner. Who remembers Manor F1 team? Jesus, that's a throwback. But anyway, here we are for this race. We are ready for the Australian Grand Prix. Ferrari lining the 6th row of the grid from P11 and P12. Defending champion Benjamin Daly. Behind his teammate Kimi Raikkonen. So Raikkonen was able to edge me out right at the death there of Q2 while I was picking myself out of a barrier. But the fight will continue to see who has the dominance of being #1 driver at Ferrari. Away we go for Season 3 of F1 2019 career mode. Charles Leclerc gets off to an absolutely stunner of a start. We go backwards, gobbled up by George Russell and almost one of the McLarens. I think that's, who was that? Bottas diving back up my inside into turn 1. Had to avoid him. And as such, I kind of screwed over his teammate, Russell, on the outside. So it's P12, despite all of that kerfuffle with some of the teams around us, and we can press on with our race. Looks like initially everyone around us on the soft compound tyre as we lose the back end on that curb. Again, that's where we spun out earlier on in the weekend. That crash that we had in Q2 has me somewhat rattled a little bit. There is a little bit of oversteer in this car, which we will need to watch out for, but it's giving us pace at the moment, at least over our teammate. I feel like we do have the measure on him. But on the current tyre that we're on, it's going to take a little while for this tyre to phase in. But once it does, get up to temperature, and once the softs once the soft tyre runners in front of us start to die off, that's when we'll be able to really flex the muscles, I suppose. But early stages of this race, oh! That was close. That was close to repeating what happened in Q2. We cannot afford for that to happen in the race. Again, missed the apex, or maybe this time I think it was actually... No, it was us pushing too hard this time around. It was I guess the weight of the fuel in the car, which really pushed us wide. I can't blame the fuel. It was me. I ran wide. I pushed too hard. So I'll need to reel that in the coming laps because we can't afford to throw this thing into a barrier. We don't have the pace advantage over the rest of the teams to really get in the championship fight if we come away with a big fat 0 in this race. But anyway, P12 still in this Australian Grand Prix, 6 laps down, and we've made absolutely no progress. So frustrating time so far, but I feel like the race is starting to come to us now as we lose the back ends. Tyre temps are getting up there, so that's also something we'll need to watch out for. But yeah, the pace is coming to us, but we're losing performance in the tyres. We're starting to overheat them a little bit, so I'll need to get that under wraps again. But lap 7, soft compound tyre runners are starting to feel the effects of tyre wear, and as such we'll be able to claw our way back inside the top 10 now. I feel like these guys will only be a couple of laps away from their stop, and then from there we'll need qualifying laps in order to prevent the undercut from happening relative to those teams around us. But Raikkonen trying to have a go at Gasly there in the 3rd sector, blocked us off a little bit from having a go, but you know, he's entitled to do that, of course. He goes up the inside this time into turn 1. I don't think it's going to quite work out for him. We've got a bit of oversteer on the exit of turn 2, but we shall have a go at our teammate. No, Raikkonen goes to the outside. We switch to the inside, then go back to the outside again. Just trying to look for an avenue pass, but nothing is really working out for us at this stage. Getting trapped behind the likes of Gasly and Raikkonen. We don't have the straight line speed that the Renault does. So it's making life a little bit difficult when it comes to overtaking this guy. So kind of frustrating. It's almost like we're back to, you know, how we started off in Season 2 with the Renault. We started off with a very slow car. We got to a point where the Renault was OP in a straight line, but not so good in the corners. We find ourselves in that scenario once again, which is a crazy dynamic in a completely different team. But anyway, we see the first of the soft compound tyre runners in the pit lane. That was one of the Williams, I believe. Gasly going defensive somewhat into turn 3. We try and do the big yeet around the outside. Unfortunately, that does not work, and we lose a couple of seconds there in that exchange. More runners are now in the lane here on lap 11. Raikkonen on the move with my former teammate Daniel Ricciardo as he goes up the inside into turn 1. Ricciardo holding it nicely around the outside there through turn 2. And now, I think Ricciardo lost the position to Raikkonen eventually. So now, here we are, fighting away with our former team. Gasly dives to the lane for what I can only imagine is a set of medium compound tyres. Some teams are opting for hards, I think. Definitely that Williams that came in earlier went on to the hard compound tyre to run to the end of this race. But we now find ourselves in P3 with myself and Ricciardo still yet to make a stop. Ricciardo really struggling for tyres at this stage of the Grand Prix. We're all over him in the corners, but we can't really do anything on the straights because that Renault, we know what they've got as a package. They've been working on their drag reduction. They've got a really solid engine now, 3 seasons into this campaign. And so we were never really able to affect the move on track. We had to wait for him to make his stop. But I feel like if he would have stayed out that extra lap, we would have got him anyway. But regardless, we now have some clear air and we lead this race. Maybe a while before we legitimately lead a Grand Prix again, but you know, here we are. We've got the Haas's chasing us down there, running 2 and 3, but effective 1 and 2 in this race. Vettel now trying to pull a move on Hulkenberg as he goes round the outside into turn 3, completely drives around his teammate and takes the effective lead of this race. So again, Hulkenberg looking like the number 2 driver within Haas. He'll be not enjoying that, but hopefully he can get back in the mix with his teammate. Somehow Hulkenberg did get back in front of Vettel. I think it was a DRS overtake, but then Vettel finds himself losing out again to Hulkenberg, and the battle continues for supremacy at Haas.
Well, the leading our teammate by 17.2 seconds. They're on fresh mediums. They're in 10th. The time last lap was a 1:22.7.
So, sit rep, 17 laps into this race. We lead our teammate by 17 seconds, so we will emerge behind Raikkonen once we make our stop. But we're going to be fairly close to him and on a faster tyre, so life isn't looking all too bad in our race as we lose the lead to Sebastian Vettel. That was only inevitable. I don't want to fight the Haas's at all, to be honest. I just want to run my own race. Unfortunately, I had to stretch it the extra lap to make sure that the Softs can make it to the end of the race, and that meant getting in a fight with the Haas's, which was, you know, less than ideal, but Vettel got past cleanly without having to fight him, and we didn't really have to defend all too much from Hulkenberg, fortunately enough, through the middle sector, and we can make our stop. So that is the gap from myself to Raikkonen. He's putting the pressure on the Red Bulls, who started from the front row of the grid today. Absolutely mad. That's what happens when we don't make it into Q3. All the Season 1 performance times come in, and there was no Mercedes, there was no Ferrari taking part in Q3. So Red Bull dominated qualifying at the end there, and so some of the faster teams had to fight their way through. But again, Red Bull still not there this season. They'll be wanting to be better than what they are, and I feel like Verstappen and also Devin Butler will also be running thin on patience with that team. I feel like they might be two guys who leave that team if they don't show some massive progress very soon. Anyway, purple through the first and second sector. We're going for the fastest lap now in an effort to give us some more points in this race. We come across the line and we do go fastest with a 1:19.979. That is a blistering lap to put together in a race scenario. I think we're only a second away from what we did in qualifying, so I feel like that time should hopefully stand as the fastest lap, unless one of the Haas's can beat it. Hulkenberg won't be doing that, as he is now out of the Grand Prix, so that leaves Sebastian Vettel into the lead of this race with absolutely no competition from behind. The Alphas aren't too far back, but I don't think they have the pace to run it with the sole remaining Haas in this race. So we get promoted to P8, an extra 2 points against our name. But yeah, there's still more points on offer with Hulkenberg. Hulkenberg. I don't know how I got Hulkenberg and Raikkonen mixed up in my commentary, but I've somehow made that a thing. 6 laps left in this race. I'm now losing my voice, so let's hopefully get this move done quickly and efficiently. Raikkonen gives us the big squeeze through turn 1, so yeah, I really appreciate that. Thankfully, no damage can see from us there, but Raikkonen absolutely giving no space through turns 1 and 2. So he's making his intentions blatantly clear that he wants to be the #1 driver at Ferrari. He doesn't really care about playing the team game. He wants to, yeah, show his authority, I suppose, but it's really silly. There's still 5 laps left in this race. I've got a faster tyre, I've got fresher tyres. It is almost a losing battle that he's fighting, but he's fighting it nonetheless. Defensive into the middle, into the third sector, sorry. And yeah, this move is only going to be inevitable as we dive to the inside for the second last corner. We give Raikkonen the big squeeze. I was not impressed with his antics on the last lap, so we saw past him with absolutely no regard for his race. We squeeze him out onto the grass, and we are through as the lead Ferrari in this Australian Grand Prix into P7. The Red Bulls are up next, and they are on the hard compound tyres. So the amount of advantage we're going to have in terms of pace is going to be monumental, at least on Devin Butler, who is on the hards. No, it's Verstappen on the hards. Sorry, I'm getting everything wrong here as Butler got a bad exit through the third to last corner. We squeeze him out in the same manner that we did to Kimi Raikkonen. Verstappen is up next, and he's on the hards. He'll have no pace, given that his tyre is 2 steps harder than ours. So the delta would be 1.5 seconds to maybe even 2 seconds. Verstappen has no chance as we make our way up the inside into the third sector. And there we go. We are through for P5. Verstappen still fighting away, which, to be fair to him, is a valiant effort. But against someone on tyres that are 2 steps softer, you've just got no chance, unfortunately. And we are through for P5 in this race. A lot of respect being shown here, actually. There was no rubbing his side pods. We got very close right there at that moment, but that was kind of on Verstappen, who ran out a little bit wide. But otherwise, a very nice and respectful exchange, which is good to see. We've got a yellow flag in the middle sector. This is one of the Williams who is out. This is... Who is it? I didn't catch who retired from the Grand Prix. Let's get a close look at it. It is Sergio Perez, who is out of this race. So we move up into P4 in this Australian Grand Prix. And what was looking like a, just a scrappy old race trying to pick up a couple of points here or there has turned into a P4 by virtue of some of the top teams really failing away with some bad reliability in the first race. So that's not a great sign, is it, for your championship campaign? Williams want to be fighting at the fronts, fighting away and putting pressure on the Haas's. Unfortunately, they have not managed to do so. Sebastian Vettel wins the opening race of Season 3, and Hulkenberg will be left shattered after a DNF in today's race. For us, it's going to be P4, only one place away from Lucas Weber. What an amazing result. This car is not supposed to be in this position, but here we are with a handful of points. P4.
Great drive, great drive. We're really happy with that performance.
Anthony Davidson, how do you think they were able to set themselves apart today?
Well, they certainly stood out as a driver with tons of confidence on the track. I think their ability to keep their cool, even during some of the more hectic parts of the race, meant they were able to capitalise on the mistakes of other drivers, giving them the opportunity to make their way to the top spot with ease.
Haas are no doubt happy with today's performance, having secured the win this weekend. And our drivers are making their way out for the podium celebrations as we speak.
What an interesting first race. Vettel wins, which is no surprise. I would say he would have been the favourite heading into this race, given his car's performance and the performance of Hulkenberg and his form lately. But I've got to say, Williams is the big surprise to me. They were supposed to be, the second best car, and Charles Leclerc is languishing down in P6, and Sergio Perez putting pressure on the Alphas, but not in front of them, and he gets a DNF. So Alfa Romeo fill out the podium, and as such, I think they'll be top of the constructors. They are by 8 points over Haas. So it's a very interesting start to the season. Williams need to work on their legitimate performance upgrades. They might be there in terms of, fuel consumption or ERS or tyre wear upgrades, but they need that raw performance in order to match it with Alfa Romeo, and especially Haas, because at the moment, that's been a dreadful start to the season, given where they are in the performance index. But for us, great result. I was not expecting P4. I was, hopeful to get inside the top 7. I felt like that would have been a good result today, given the lack of upgrades we have so far. But P4 is an amazing result. There's still a long way to go for us to bridge the gap between us and the top teams. So that's going to be the goal, at least for the first half of the season, and then we'll go from there. In terms of upgrades, I think it probably makes sense for us to go for another power upgrade. We're currently blocked in by the aero. We're waiting for a drag reduction upgrade to go on the car there. Chassis-wise, we're looking pretty good. The only upgrades left are brake upgrades, which aren't really going to do too much for us at the moment. So I feel like, the obvious path to go with at the moment is engine power. Of course, once we get that drag reduction upgrade come our way, we'll then focus on more of the downforce stuff. Yeah, we'll tackle that once we get there. But guys, that has been this first episode of F1 2019 Career Mode for Season 3. I apologize about the break. Sometimes these things are necessary in order to, prepare for the new season, to get out some other content, and get excited and ramped up for a new season of Career Mode. If this is your first time watching my channel, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new to see plenty more F1 2019 content. I'm really excited to see how this season unfolds, and if it's anything like last season, we're in for an absolute cracker. That's it from me today. Until the next one, I'll see you next time.